You ever see water change color? I don't mean in the movies. I mean real life. 1 second it's sky blue, and the next, it's the color of your worst nightmare. It happened on a Tuesday, at 3:14 p.m., at the neighborhood pool. There were kids laughing, a warm breeze, and then a gunshot. My daughter was 5, wearing her favorite orange starfish floaty. By the time I reached her, the water wasn't blue anymore. It was red, and the woman who pulled the trigger didn't run, didn't scream. She just adjusted her blouse and said, "She broke the rules." That was our HOA president. That was the day she turned a neighborhood into a war zone. And that was the day I stopped being just a father and became something else. You think you know what you'd do in my shoes. You think you'd stay calm. Call 911, let justice handle it. But what if justice doesn't come fast enough? What if the woman who shot your child still holds the keys to your community? Still walks free? Still thinks she's right? Stick around, because before this story ends, there'll be chains, sirens, and one hell of a reckoning. You ever watch the sky shatter? Not clouds, not weather. I'm talking about a single voice so sharp it rips through summer like lightning. That was the sound that ended my daughter's innocence. Get out of that pool now. Ava stopped mid-kick. The water still rippled around her like nothing had changed. But I knew everything had. I looked up from my chair, book sliding from my lap, and saw her. Karen Martinez. Red in the face, eyes wild, striding in through the gate like she owned the world. Clipboard in one hand, massive handbag in the other. Heels clicking like a countdown. And God help me, I didn't see it then. But that bag was heavy, with more than entitlement. Regulation 47B, she snapped, pointing at Ava's floaty like it was a threat. That starfish violates community pool standards, 16 inches max. That thing is at least 20. You ever try to explain reason to someone who's turned rules into religion? She's 5, I said, standing now, voice tight. She's not breaking the law, she's just playing. This is a neighborhood, not a circus, Karen barked. Your daughter's floaty is disruptive, unsafe, and you. She pointed at me now. You clearly think the rules don't apply to people like you. There it was, the shift. This wasn't about pool safety. It was about control. And control, I would learn, is a dangerous drug in the wrong hands. Ava's bottom lip quivered. She clutched her float tighter. I took a step closer. That's when I saw it. The glint. Just for a second. Black, metallic, intentional, tucked halfway into Karen's purse. On gun. My heart dropped straight into my gut. Karen, I said, slowly raising my hands. You need to walk away, right now. I warned you, she hissed. You people think rules are just suggestions. She reached into the bag. And that's when time broke. I lunged, screamed, but too late. The gun went off. The sound cracked through the air like God snapping his fingers. And then, Ava screamed. Blood in the water? The starfish float drifted, slowly spinning, as red spread from her side like ink in water. She looked at me, wide-eyed, and whispered, "Daddy, it hurts." That was the day childhood ended. Not just hers. Mine too. Because when someone points a gun at your child over a pool rule, the rules don't matter anymore. Only the reckoning does. Comment below if you've ever felt that line, where rules stop making sense. Like, share, hit subscribe. Because the next part? Let's just say, you haven't met Karen Martinez until you've seen what she did next. You'd think a clipboard means organization, structure, notes, community improvement. But in Karen Martinez's hands, it was a weapon. And that gun? That wasn't a freak accident. It was the logical conclusion of unchecked power wrapped in HOA regulations and personalized vendettas. See, Karen didn't just snap that day at the pool. She had been cracking for months. Only no one noticed. Because we mistook obsession for leadership. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was inventing them. Towels that didn't match HOA-approved color palettes? $50, 0 cents fine. A decorative flamingo on your lawn after Easter? Citation for seasonal violation. Kids drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk? Graffiti warning. Karen kept a binder, color-coded, tab-labeled, with pictures of children and infractions. I'm not kidding. And the scary part? We all let it happen. Because she wore the mask of civic duty. Because she spoke in phrases like, I'm just trying to maintain standards. Here, some people just don't understand community pride. No one expected it would lead to blood. But when she pulled that gun and fired at a 5-year-old with a floaty, every polite excuse we'd ever given her shattered like glass. That wasn't stress. That wasn't a mistake. That was bureaucracy, hardened into brutality. And still, as she stood there, soap, mascara running, hands trembling over her purse, she said, she broke the rules? Like she was writing a citation for noise after 10 p.m. Not standing over a child she just shot. My neighbors stood frozen. Some out of fear, some out of guilt. Because truth is, we all knew Karen had a God complex. We just didn't think she'd bring a gun to church. It was built in. But I didn't freeze. I acted. I locked the gates. I called the override. I pulled her out of the myth she thought she lived in and dragged her straight into reality. They say there's a line between reason and rage. A thin, invisible line you only cross once. When something sacred is threatened. For me, that line was red. Red, swirling in a pool where my daughter should have been laughing. Red, blooming from her side like ink in water. That's what I saw when I dove in. My daughter, my 5 years old, eyes wide with pain, lips trembling. Daddy, it hurts. He said it so soft, almost like an apology. And something inside me broke. I pulled her out, pressed on the wound, begged her to stay with me. Then handed her to Maria, whose hands were shaking so bad I thought she'd drop the phone. Keep pressure, don't let her close her eyes. Then I stood up, soaked in blood, trembling, breathing like a storm. Karen was still there, gun dangling at her side. Expression unreadable, like she still believed she was right. That's when I realized she thought she'd won. Not legally, not morally, but in her mind, she'd enforced a rule. And me? I was the father of the infraction. She should have listened, Karen muttered. You all should have. She didn't drop the gun. She didn't even look scared. And I didn't reach for a weapon. I didn't scream. I reached into my pocket and hit the app. Lockdown initiated. Every gate in the HOA slammed shut. Steel, alarms, reinforced entry points. Not to keep anyone out, but to keep her in. Karen blinked. I sealed the exits, I said. You're not going anywhere. You know that look when someone realizes they're no longer in control? Like a raccoon that just realized it crawled into a cage with the food. She raised the gun again, hands shaking now. Stay back. And I smiled. If you're going to shoot again, Karen, you better pray it kills me. Because if it does, you won't need HOA bylaws. You'll need Jesus. She faltered. And in that moment, he charged. I didn't punch. I didn't kick. I grabbed her, dragged her, right into the water. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was fatherhood unhinged. Raw, animal, focused. Not to kill, but to show her what fear felt like. To let her gasp, flail, choke. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough for justice to breathe. I pulled her up, coughing, makeup smeared, blouse soaked like paper. She looked less like a tyrant, more like a wet warning sign. "You don't get to walk away from this," I said. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not after Ava, not after today. I didn't plan to trap anyone that day. I didn't wake up thinking, today's the day I lock a woman in a pool deck with a zip tie and a clipboard. But life doesn't wait for permission. So when Karen fired that shot, and Neva's floaty turned red, I did what any dad with a brain and a custom home security system would do. I hit the kill switch. Lockdown. Activated. Every gate. Every exit. Every digital lock I had quietly installed to keep garden thieves out, now used to trap a tyrant in her own HOA arena. Karen heard the clang of the last gate seal. That metallic click, like a steel period at the end of her sentence. "What is that?" she snapped, turning in circles. "That?" I said. "That's you? Not getting away this time." And suddenly, for the first time in years, Karen Martinez didn't have a door to slam or a street to flee down. She was stuck. With me. And the truth. The pool was silent. Too silent. Neighbors frozen, half horrified, half hypnotized. Because the silence wasn't fear anymore. It was a prelude. It started small. A cough. Then Maria, still on the phone with 911, raised her chin and said out loud, "I saw it. She aimed." Then Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward, fists shaking. "She's been threatening us for years. My son got a $200 0-cent fine for playing soccer." Then the woes. "She took photos of our backyard, our private yard." It was like one person speaking broke a spell. One by one they came alive. Not screaming, not rioting, just saying what they never dared to before. Karen wasn't just a bad president. She was a walking indictment. And that's the thing about silence. It's not always consent. Sometimes it's just waiting for one crack in the armor. And that day, that blood-soaked, chlorine-scented afternoon, Karen didn't just pull a trigger. She pulled the plug on her own authority. We weren't scared of her anymore. Not after what she did. Not with Ava lying on a stretcher. We didn't just watch her break the rules. We finally remembered we were allowed to break the silence. Here's a question for you. When did homeowner rules become scripture? Like when did Karen Martinez stop being a president of a volunteer board and start acting like the warden of a gated ideological prison? Because after Ava was rushed to the hospital, after the police taped off the pool, and Karen was handcuffed like some delusional dictator caught in her own regime, that's when the real mess began. Not just the blood, not just the crime scene, but the belief. See, turns out some people in the neighborhood still didn't get it, still defended her. Karen was just doing her job. She was under stress. The floaty was technically too big. I wanted to scream. She shot a child, Linda, over a pool toy. But I didn't. Because that's the thing with cults. You can't reason with people who've mistaken control for protection. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear this wasn't Karen alone. She had built something. A system. A web. Fake violations. Fines never approved by the board. Security enhancements with no receipts. And a mysterious HOA safety fund that somehow paid for her personal landscaping. We found surveillance logs, private group chats, even a list labeled residents to monitor. And on that list, my name, my wife's, Maria, the Rodriguez kids, anyone who ever spoke up. Wasn't an HOA. It was a slow mug she purged with seasonal decorations and a Facebook group. But something had changed. The silence was gone. The spell was broken. Neighbors who hadn't said a word in 3 years were now handing over printed emails, screenshots, even HOA newsletters that had been edited post-distribution to erase complaints. And suddenly, the Queen of Fines looked more like the leader of a paper coup. We'd let it grow. We watered it with compliance. But now we were ready to pull it out by the roots. I stood at a town hall meeting 2 days after Ava's shooting, held up a stack of forged citations, and said, "This wasn't about pool toys, this was a takeover." The crowd? Silent at first. Then came a slow clap. And just like that, Karen's HOA empire started to crumble, not with a bang, but under the weight of 1,000 paper cuts. In the courtroom smelled like lemon cleaner and bad decisions. Karen sat at the defendant's table, hair flat, blouse beige, and ego barely holding together under foundation. She still wore that look, the "I'm the real victim here" face. The same one she wore after shooting my daughter and claiming it was a compliance issue. But this wasn't the pool. This wasn't her turf. And this time, the rules weren't hers to write. The prosecution laid it out plain. Video footage. Witnesses. 911 call logs. Even screenshots from her infamous HOA command chat. The jury gasped when they heard her own words. Some people only learn when they bleed. A mom in the back started crying. Karen's lawyer tried to claim it was metaphorical. Nice try. Meanwhile, out in the world, our community, that was its own courtroom. Facebook was on fire. HOA watchdog blogs picked up the story. Memes were flying. One had her face photoshopped onto Judge Judy with a caption, "I sentence you to 20 years of overpriced mulch and silence." Even the local news anchor started her segment with, "Well, folks, HOA power just met a reality check." But inside that courtroom, no memes, no likes. Just 12 people and the weight of what she'd done. When it was my turn to testify, I didn't bring drama. I brought a photo. Ava, 5 years old, post-surgery, holding Mr. Starfish with IV tubes in both arms. I looked at Karen. She didn't flinch. "You aimed a gun at a child," I said. "Then you called it leadership." It wasn't just two legal teams facing off. It was two worldviews. One where control was law, and another where compassion was. Karen's world cracked. And ours? Ours stood taller. Outside, the pool had been repainted. The gates had new signs. "Welcome, be kind, watch for little feet." Maria started calling the kids' swim team the Floaty Fighters. Even Ava, my Ava, had started smiling again. The community? We'd gone from whispers and fines to potlucks and porch lights. It was a Tuesday. Clear skies. 82 degrees. No sirens, no screaming, no clipboards in sight. And for the first time since that day, Ava stood at the edge of the pool again. Her dolphin swimsuit clung a little too tight. She'd grown since last summer. In her arms, a brand new floaty, orange, starfish-shaped, Mr. Starfish 2. You ever watch a kid confront trauma without even knowing it? It's wild. She stared at the water like it owed her something. And maybe it did. This wasn't just about swimming again. This was Ava saying, "You don't get to take this from me." Not the pool, the laughter, not the joy, especially not joy. I knelt beside her. "You don't have to do this, baby." She looked up at me, eyes wide, brave, still carrying shadows. "But I want to." Then she stepped in. 1 foot, then another, and the water didn't bite. It held her, just like I hoped it would. Maria cried. Mr. Rodriguez filmed it like it was the Super Bowl. Someone played soft acoustic guitar in the background, unplanned but weirdly perfect. The new sign shimmered in the sun. Ava's Oasis, a place where all children are free to laugh. The old sign used to read, "Pool ruled strictly enforced." We kept that one in a bonfire. This wasn't just a pool reopening. This was a reset. The HOA was gone. The fear dissolved. In its place, Neighborhood, a real one. People talked again. I smiled, baked, hugged without looking over their shoulder. And Ava? She didn't just float. She swam, kicked, splashed water like it was paint, and the pool was her canvas. Her laughter, it echoed louder than any clipboard command ever had. You ever wonder how a monster ends up living right next door? Not in the horror movie way. Not the kind with claws or fangs or a basement full of secrets. No, I'm talking about the kind who smiles at you in the morning, waves during the HOA meeting, brings store-bought cookies to the block party, and still thinks control is love and rules are gospel. That was Karen Martinez. And for years we let her grow. We saw the signs, the fines, the way she spoke to kids like they were breaking curfew in a prison yard. We heard the rumors, the wheelchair ramp complaint, the towel violation, the too festive Halloween decorations. But we said nothing. Why? Because she was organized. Because she knew the bylaws. Because, deep down, we were afraid. Not of her. Of rocking the boat. Of being the next target. It took a bleeding child for us to say, enough. Let that sink in. That's how long it took. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. The monster was never hiding. We were. But here's the thing about monsters. They don't survive the light. Once we stood up, together, once we questioned, documented, voted, and demanded more, Karen fell apart. Because monsters don't know what to do. When people stop whispering and start witnessing. Today, Ava swims. The neighborhood laughs. The HOA is history. And the only clipboard allowed near that pool now? It's for cannonball scores. And Mr. Rodriguez takes it very seriously. So if you're watching this, wondering how it got that far, ask yourself, who's writing the rules where you live? Who's enforcing them? And are they doing it for protection or for power? Because monsters don't always knock. Sometimes they already have a key. Comment if this unlocked something in you. Like, subscribe, share this with someone who's ever been told those are just the rules. Because rules should serve people, not silence them. And if you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're the light that makes monsters run. Thanks for watching. Stay kind, stay strong, and always stand for someone smaller than you.